The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make a lot of noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you. With you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
Alright.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Tickets, please take your seat on the left. There will be exit. Prepare for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and liftoff.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. It's great to have you along for the ride on this Tuesday, August 8th, Wednesday, August 9th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you've had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the very smoky mountains of central British Columbia as we are here 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on our terrestrial stations, WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. If you like our music, get your horns up for Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official music of SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you head on over to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of SOR as well. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you have to do me a favor. You got to sign into one of our chat rooms on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. And as of right now, go to our store, pick up a t-shirt, poster, stickers, read up on the encounter online, courtesy of our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. You can check out my latest blog there as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Tim Doyle of UFOseekers.com and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV also have some great video viewing on our site as well. Tonight we get into a story of intrigue, personal experiences with unnatural phenomena. It's something that I wear pretty close to my chest, as do many others. Being an experiencer myself, along with millions of others on this planet, we know there's something strange going on. You cannot convince us otherwise. Whether it's ghosts, cryptids, or in tonight's case, extraterrestrial contact, when you've had something this extreme happen to you, it changes who you are as a person, effective immediately. Sometimes for the good, and sometimes, well, you don't even recognize who you are. In the early 1990s, Chad and Alta Dillard experienced their first UFO, a massive sight in Hammond, Louisiana. This experience opened their eyes and continued in 1997. It was a night that would live with them forever. Chad, Alta, and Jacqueline were taken from a street corner in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Aliens, missing time, they've experienced it. And tonight, we hear their story. Chad and Alta Dillard, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. You are going the distance, 3 hours. We're talking aliens, and damn it, I love my aliens. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. It's such an honor.
Well, it's an honor for us, for you to tell your story around here, because one thing that I have learned since before I started this show in 2014, is when you're an experiencer, you don't have many places to turn or to research, especially if this is new to you guys. Previous to the early 90s when you saw that UFO, did you believe in any of this malarkey that we call ufology?
I love the word malarkey. I'll just jump in and say, that it wasn't that I didn't believe. In my case in particular, I just particularly didn't care. It didn't really matter to me as far as if or if not. It was not something that I had particularly any interest in. But I will also begin with, just to kind of put this out there to sort of frame our connection, Chad and I, is that I am 10 years older than Chad. I'm born in the late 50s. And of mixed native blood from the area of Arizona. And my mother seemed to be very connected with space. She had a strong desire to travel in space and didn't hesitate to share that with people, but she also very seldom, but she did say it a few times in my young child life that when I was 6 months old, which would have made it the end of the 50s, she said she was driving and I was the only passenger in the car, and keeping in mind 6 months old, she claims that it was daytime and she's driving across the desert. I have no more information than what I'm sharing with you now. My mother has passed on, and she was really my only family besides Chad, but she claims that a metallic craft, and then a time or two she would use the word UFO, she says came down out of the sky and stopped her on the road. Now, the fact that it would embarrass me so badly when she would use this kind of language, I just thought she was crazy. And I would, just like a child, I was extremely embarrassed, and I would try to disappear out of the room. So I never heard any further conversation about it. I also will mention that I identify my mom as a self-made woman, and she had a powerful force about her, a very loving being, but nobody ever challenged her. And so nor did I. So that, seems to be, if one would believe this, my beginning with this genre.
So you believed in it, Alta, as growing up because you and your mother had these experiences. What about you, Chad? Were you a believer growing up? Was there talk of UFOs? Because I know my house was silent. We didn't talk about this stuff because, according to my parents, it just didn't exist.
Mm. Yeah, same with me. I really, I didn't give it, much thought. It's not that I did not believe, but it's not that I just never really thought about it. The only thing that I really remember in my young childhood is when when I was young, about 7 years old, my dad was a farmer in the Delta of Arkansas, and there was this instance where there were these 3 burnt crop circles out in the middle of one of the soybean fields, and it kind of stumped my grandfather and my uncle and my dad. They wasn't sure what had happened, but they were just these 3 perfect round burnt circles straight in a row out by our house in the middle of the field.
Well, that's odd enough as it is. But had you, Chad, had any UFO sightings previous to the early 90s when you and Alta had your sighting?
No, I had not.
And how about you, Alta? Do you remember growing up seeing any craft in the sky?
No, I do not. But I will mention again, I had a reunion with a childhood friend that I hadn't seen in close to 40 years. And when we got reconnected, she reminded me of something that I had blanked out, and that was she and I were respectively about 14 and 15, somewhere in that age range, on a summer vacation with my mom and my stepfather. We were, at the time, living in the Midwest. We had apparently decided to drive to the Southwest, where I'm originally from. So the 4 of us, and she claims that, and when she said this to me, it started to bring this memory back to me. She claims that, did I remember that when we were in, she says, Flagstaff, Arizona, all of a sudden, in one of those old cars, this would have been in the 70s, that we're in the back seat, and she says, it's nighttime, we're on the side of the road, and my parents are missing. They're not in the car. Now, I had a very protective mother. So that just was bizarre. And she says that we're looking up in the sky through the windshield, and a bright light came down out of the sky and came right towards us. And that's the last thing that she remembers. And, I as well, as that little memory keeps flashing back to me. But again, with my mother passed on and stepfather long dead, again, nobody to talk to about any of this.
So when you guys got together, did you ever hang out around a campfire? And I say that term very loosely because I'm very sick of the campfire smell right now. But did you ever hang out, in candlelight or a campfire area telling ghost stories or UFO stories about the strange and weird? Was that part of your vocabulary, or was it something that just wasn't talked about previous to when your experiences started? Alta.
Okay, in my case, I seem to be somewhat, I used the word, I've kind of babied up a lot of the language just for my own sanity's sake. I used the word ghosty, of course, instead of ghost or apparition. But it would seem that was much more familiar to me in my childhood, teenage years, throughout my life, seeming to be very connected with that other level of energy. I call it all energy. I am considered as sensitive. My first memory is, again, I have a very strange mystery, early beginnings, but my first memory is around 9 years old, being tested in a military hospital in Aurora, Colorado for what was known as ESP. And to hear my mother tell it, apparently I tested high. I have no idea what that's all about, none whatsoever. Not long ago, only in the last several months, I was blessed to have a very quick message from a gentleman that many know now in the world as Grant Cameron. Somebody had suggested that he might be able to help me get those records from this hospital. And I made contact with him, and as I said, most people have not even responded to me, but he was kind enough to, I am paraphrasing it, make it clear to me that he was fairly sure I would never get those answers, those records. And that's not something, and I mean this very sincerely, I'm very grateful to him for even speaking to me, but I don't accept that. So I'm still on this, seeking information in any way that I can. So it would appear that, in my case, having that, whatever one wants to call it, the sensitive side to me, the world of apparition, ghosty kind of stuff seems somewhat familiar. The UFO world and what have you, absolutely foreign to me.
And how about for you, Chad? Was it something that was a part of your routine and vocabulary, or was it something that you just really didn't discuss because maybe you hadn't had an experience or you hadn't really had to delve into that conversation ever?
Well, I mean, we didn't, do the campfire thing, all the time. There may have been a few times. But I did grow up with a stepmom that considered herself a white witch. She had their tarot cards and, all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't foreign to me, but I really wasn't educated in any kind of, paranormal, type of stuff.
So let's get to the early 1990s. How easy do you remember the date of when your life transformed, Alta?
So it happened to be Valentine's Day, 1990 in particular. The story of Chad and Alta. It's, as I said, Valentine's Day. At the time, I'm 33. I'd never been married. I had no children. And I'll be very honest, I didn't really desire either in my life. I'd had a very strange life, uncomfortable. I couldn't get answers. And I was just getting through life and just trying to find my way. I had started a fairly new job. I think I'd only been on this job a week or so in the medical profession. I had worked in the medical profession hands-on. In this case, it was selling medical equipment. Well, I am, honest to admit, I am a true dimwit when it comes to technology. And I've always been a lot more mental, if you will. The word, I guess, used telepathic. So that's a much more comfortable realm for me. The idea of technology is very confusing. So it was such a kind of joke almost internally that I've got this job selling medical equipment. I hated it, and it didn't like me very well. So I'm not a happy girl, and I'm a very uncomfortable. I'm having a really uncomfortable day. And I'm, having a moment of reflection of my whole life and just feeling like I'm wasting it. And lost, confused. So that's just to kind of set the mood of how that day progressed. There's a young man that I'm working with by the name of David. And David is a young married guy who's just had a baby. He can't stand the fact that I don't have a date. So he decides he's going to interact or intercede and create a blind date for me. I'd never been on a blind date before, so that was not something I was interested in either. He didn't accept that. He went ahead and made this phone call in front of me. And basically, to shorten that story, the individual he's talking to seemed very interested in me. And I've said this before, the way I'm being described, I was interested in me. I would have had a date with me. I'm thinking, I don't sound near as bad as I feel. And yet, the guy that, being asked for this date makes it clear he can't make the date because he has to work that evening. He's in the restaurant business. So now I'm in the worst mood ever. It's like I don't want a blind date. I can't get a blind date. That's, again, just to set the mood of how this day rolled on. I get off work. I go home. I had happened to be staying with my mom. I had left the state prior to this. I moved back. My mother had moved into a new kind of environment, a new city, a new area of the city, so it's unfamiliar to me. I'd come back to the state, and I'm staying with my mom. My mom and I are starting to have problems. I'm too old to be staying with my mom, and that's not helping the mood either. I decided to do something extremely out of character, and that was, and it's not that I'm a saint by any stretch of the imagination, but the one thing I never had done was I didn't drink alcohol and drive a vehicle. And so on this day, I decided I was going to go out and have a drink and just try to get over myself. I got home, I changed my clothes very quickly out of my business attire, put on my casual, whatever, got in my car. And once I got in my car, I realized I don't know where the hey I'm at. And I'm not sure what the hey I'm doing. And so I was checking myself and then immediately discovered in my mom, and she's in a fairly old residential neighborhood, I discovered this little tiny pub. It looked like a little pub, and it looked like something in Europe that you might see like in Scotland, Ireland. And so it was very homey, it was comfortable looking, and it was tiny. I decided I'll stop here, close to my mom's place. I get out of my car, there's not a car in the parking lot, and it's a tiny parking lot. When I walk into this location, it's bare. There's nobody in there. The sun has not set yet, so we've still got daylight out. What I needed to have happen seemed to keep happening in this event, what I call the event of meeting Chad this night. This motherly-looking female came out from behind the back room. I needed a motherly-looking woman to feel comfortable doing what I was doing. She was roly-poly, round-faced, rosy-cheeked, white-haired, looked very safe. I ordered a beer, a draft. By the time she got that to me on the bar, the door opened up, the entrance, and these two guys walked in this bar, this little pub. Now, they looked as out of place as I felt. They were extremely, beyond the word handsome. I've called them beautiful in the past. They were well-dressed, casually, expensively well-dressed. One was very blonde, one had very dark hair. The blonde had on a expensive leather bomber jacket. Now, I'm taking note of all of this very quickly, but it's not changing my mood. I'm just thinking, okay, this is as weird as the rest of this day has been. I'm not thinking nothing paranormal, nothing like this. One of them engaged me in playing pool. This place was big enough to have a small pool table, or a pool table, and one small little table and chairs. I mean, it was tiny. So while we're playing pool, I then discovered that the blonde, that's the bomber jacket he's wearing, claims that he's the private pilot for this other guy's plane. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. Where the hey is there a airport? There's no airport anywhere around this area. And this is not an area that's money to have a private. So it's just, this is running through my head very quickly. Again, I'm just taking notes. At some point, I'm asked, is there any place livelier in this city? Which, of course, told me immediately, they ain't from here either. Now, the location is Little Rock, Arkansas, 1990. At the time, it's close to 300,000 people, and it's the capital of the state, so it's not a small farm town. And meaning there's a lot of locations, a lot of clubs, lots of restaurants, what have you, in the city. When they asked me this, I came up with a location that I had never been to before that was a large sports bar. Well, that's just weird, but that's what I came up with. And I feel like the reason I came up with this location is because the guy that owned this place was a friend of my mother's. My mom had affiliation with Bill Clinton when he was Attorney General for the state. My mom had studied law. Clinton was one of my mother's law professors for a small period of time while she was in college. So she also mixed Indian, just kind of all fit hand in hand for her to somewhat be friends with this individual. So she was somewhat known. And he had appointed her as an environmental codes inspector for the city. So she was, and a premise inspector, housing inspector. So the whole point is people in business pretty much knew who my mom was. So I feel like this is the reason why I chose this location. But again, you'll hear very soon, that doesn't make a lot of sense either. But next thing I know, I might add, I go blank from point A to point B. I have no memory at all of leaving that little pub with these two guys and going to the second location. It's just, I have no memory of this. I also don't remember drinking. Now, I remember ordering a beer. I'm sure I did drink it, but I don't remember that. So my point is that I didn't hang out in this pub with these guys getting drunk all night long. No sense of being drugged. If I was, in fact, drugged, Chad has pointed out in the past, you know, how do you come in and go out throughout a night like what I was doing? If you've been, as they say, Mickey'd or what have you. So we end up at the second location. Now, my mood is not changing. All of a sudden, I've got memory again of being at this place. I don't want to be with these guys. That's very strange also. They're extremely attractive. I remember very polite, apparently moneyed to some degree, but I had no interest in any of that. I had a girlfriend that I had worked with in the medical profession earlier in life. She happened to live right up the street from this pub. It was a sports bar. I called her. She happened to be the same age as I was. Again, had never been married, no children. And I had a sense she might be free that night. Well, before we could hang the phone up, she was at that bar because I had described these guys. When she gets there, again, behavior is very bizarre. I no longer want to be around any of them. I just want to single myself off away from them. Now, my behavior I'm describing to you is completely out of character for who I am. I'm very social. I'm very polite. I love to laugh. I love fun, but not on this night. So I distance myself from them. And I moved to the other side of this big sports bar. I hang out up at the bar all by myself, I think talking with the owner. And if I was really talking at all. Now, believe it or not, I'm going to go quiet, and I'm going to have Chad describe to you what happened from that moment on, of me being this really foul-mood female in a large sports bar on Valentine's night.
Yeah, so, I get a call that afternoon asking from a friend of mine, David, and he describes this lady, and I'm like, oh, it just sounds great, but I've got to work. So I went on to work that evening, and after work, it was nothing but guys that worked in the oyster bar with me. So, of course, none of us had dates, and so we all decided we're going to go down to and play darts. Again, this was a place I'd never been to. It wasn't far from, I was still living with my mom at the time, so, but it wasn't far from my mom's house, so I was like, okay, well, let's go, So, well, by the time I get over there, I decided that, I didn't really want to play darts, I go by myself, and I play pinball by myself instead of, hanging out with all my buddies. and I play a game of pinball, and about my second time, or getting ready to do my second game, and I kind of look up and I see this attractive young lady sitting at the bar. So I go up and I ask her if, she would like to play pinball with me, and she kind of looked me up and down, and she said, well, I kind of hate pinball, but I'll play with you. So she came over and we played a game of pinball, and our second one, we finished the first game, and I asked her if she wanted to play again, and she's like, well, what's your name? And I said, Chad. And she said, do you know a guy named David? I'm like, yeah. Did he call you today? Yeah. Well, I'm Alta. I'm the date that you were supposed to have. So it was kind of a blind date that didn't happen that happened anyway. And we end up hanging out the rest of the night over at my mom and I's place, talking all night long. And my mom comes in the next morning, and I introduce her to Alta. She had been over at her boyfriend's house and had come into the house to get changed and ready for work. So I introduce them, and Mom goes back to her room, and a couple of minutes later, she calls me into her room, and she says, does that name Alta, does that sound familiar to you? And I'm like, no. And she said, well, that's your grandfather's name. That's your grandfather's first name. I always knew him by Papa. Of course, the rest of the world knew him as George because he thought Alta was too feminine, so he always went by George. And so that just kind of, so I come back out and I tell Alta, I'm like, Alta. And this grandfather was, I was very close to. He helped raise me after my parents kind of split. I spent a lot of time with him. And so him and I had a special bond. And so, I tell her all of this, and then she asked me his last name, and I told her Duncan. And she said, well, that's my mom's maiden name. That's my mom's last name. And so, essentially, I married, Alta Duncan, which is my grandfather's name. So it was just a very bizarre, I think it scared Alta. I know it scared Alta. She kind of hid from me for the next 3 months, and we eventually got back together. But that was kind of our meeting, our brought togetherness.
Our arrangement.
Yes, I thought I had an arrangement once. Little did I know it came with a mother-in-law. It was scary. It was scary.
Yeah. Well, my mother-in-law and I eventually became very close. She, right after Alta went home, that morning after everything, and I think I called her that later on that day or the next day or whatever, and her mom answers, and she's like, she's not here right now, and I was like, oh, wow. Her mom was very strong, but we became very, very close. She was a special lady.
So when you guys got together and you noticed that your bond was, strong enough for a relationship, marriage, how long after you got together did the extraterrestrial experiences or the UFO, let's start with the UFO experiences, begin?
Right. So as far as I'm concerned, there was that connection from the very beginning with these two, what appear to be human-looking men, that I'm convinced so much more than that meets the eye. I'm also convinced, before we go further, I'd like for people to process that I'm having a hard time believing that pub actually exists. So someday I'd like to try to investigate that, to see if that location even really existed. But we'll fast forward now. Chad and I married a year later. We had a huge crisis happen to us 3 months after we did get together and started living with each other. A huge crisis, crisis of spirit, consciousness, what have you. A mutual friend of ours was murdered, and it changed everything about our connection, our relationship, everything. It took 20 years for that murder to be solved. So we'd like for people to keep this in mind, as anybody who's willing to hear us. So now we've married in 91. Now we'll fast forward to 1995. Chad and I my mother has left Arkansas and relocated to Louisiana. She's a newbie to Louisiana, and Chad and I are living out of state. She contacted us. She suggested or made the invitation for us to come to Louisiana where she was, so we accepted. We relocated to Louisiana, so at this stage now in 95, we're living in the kind of the outskirts, outside of a small community called Hammond, Louisiana, which is it's a very small town. It's a small college community. Chad and I were living outside of that community, several miles. On this particular night, I'll just frame the story and then let Chad share with you what happened to us. This happened to be, I think, on a Friday night. We decided to go into Hammond to have dinner. It's a big town. It was a small town, but it was the closest thing we had out there because this area is pretty swampy and very rural. So we're going to go into Hammond and have dinner and drinks. The sun has not settled yet. There's still some light out, but I'll have Chad share with you what happened to us that night.
Yeah, we're just getting into town, and we come around this bend in the road, and there's this like group of trees right there to the right of us, to the right of the road, and back behind that group of trees is the local Walmart shopping center. And as we come around this bend and this group of trees, we look up into the sky, and there's this floating city craft up in the sky. It's just massive. It's bigger than the parking lot in the Walmart shopping center. It's low to the ground. I would say a lot lower than cloud level. It just seemed to be moving very, very slow, creeping across the sky, if it even was moving at all. It was rectangle kind of shaped, with the front kind of not as wide as the back. 2 or 3 lights in the front, 3 or 4 lights in the back, kind of on the bottom of the ship or craft. Again, very black, very dark. We both kind of look up at it. I remember kind of looking down to Alta looking at me. I looked back up at it, and then we both focused back onto the driving, I did not see anybody, pulling over or pointing into the sky, anything like that.
But if I may, I'd like to interject before he goes any further, because he's repeating this so much calmer than what's going on with us while this experience is happening. We both are, me purely in pure shock. I mean, I'm in shock, instant shock. When Chad said I looked at him, my head jerked so fast away from what was couldn't be possibly up in the sky. I looked away from it, staring at Chad, begging him mentally to tell me that was not there. So I just want everyone to remember this as he's describing what we were experiencing. Absolute shock. I refuse to look at that again because that could not be happening.
Yeah, it was like, okay, we won't, if we don't look at it and we don't see it, they won't see us. They won't know that we saw it, that we saw it, So, it was like, we went on to dinner that night. We did not speak about it. We didn't talk about it. Came home, got up the next morning. The only reason that we did speak about it again was that we either heard it on the radio or in the newspaper or something like that, saying that that other people had reported seeing something crazy in the sky. Yeah, UFO in the sky.
So you actually saw a UFO city?
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was massive.
Well, we used the word city because it was just so, it took up the sky.
So big. I mean, it was like stadium football field size, you know, just huge. Huge.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. I have seen a black triangle with a friend of mine that was about that size. And that was just about Vancouver, and I remember people saying to me, now from where I lived to Vancouver was about 70 miles. And I remember telling people, if you laid this craft on the ground, it would cover the entire lower mainland of British Columbia. It was absolutely massive.
Right.
And watching the corner lights go out as an aircraft from Vancouver International Airport approached, it was just absolutely phenomenal. So I can understand where you're coming from with the size of this object. Because when you're staring up at the sky, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're like me, you're staring up at the sky looking at this, and you're looking at something that, A, not only shouldn't exist, but B, if it does exist, it sure as hell is not supposed to look like a city, is it, Chad?
Right. And I had a couple of years later, I'm with I reunite with my dad, and it's my dad and my stepmom and I think there was a couple of other people out, and I start telling some our stories that we're going to tell you tonight, but I told him about what I just told you and your listeners, and my stepmom, she's like, and my dad really kind of, he confirmed it, but he didn't really want to talk about it. But my stepmom, they were in Cancun for the new millennial, and they're down there, and they set up their chairs to watch the fireworks, and the fireworks start going off. Well, they noticed that the lights were kind of from the hotel were kind of interfering, so they take their chairs and they move up the beach a little bit, and they park their chairs right under the Temple of the Puma. And they said they sat down, and about the time they all sat down, they hear this big cat scream. And so they just kind of blow it off and, on to watching the fireworks. And they said, my stepmom says that as the fireworks start shooting off, they can see this craft in the sky, and she said that it sounded exactly like what I described that we saw. So I get to see mine above Walmart. They get to see theirs above the, Temple of the Puma. But, life's not fair. But, at least so it's something that, my dad's kind of had experiences, I've had experiences, and for this craft to sound like the same kind of craft anyway, is just kind of strange.
Alta, how did this alter your perception of what reality was at that time?
In my particular emotional state of it all, I chose to consider it a non-event. As I said, I went into shock, and somehow or other that mechanism, that conscious mechanism, was kicked into gear. And Chad and I, again, as Chad said, we would not even have thought of it again, if it had not been forced on us by hearing it in the news that there had been other witnesses. But once again, in a defense mechanism, we completely shut that off again. We never spoke about it. Never spoke about it. So within a relatively very short amount of time of this event happening to us, we're still choosing to be asleep, whatever that means, and just not deal with that. And we make the decision to move to the French Quarter relatively shortly after this happens to us. French Quarter is about somewhere 45 minutes, an hour away from where we were living. And that took on a whole other ball game of events that seemed to be preparatory for setting us up for what we call this main event in 97. We've had many events since 97. But 97 involved Chad and I and another woman. So we do consider that, if you will, somewhat of a main event. But the 2 years prior to that, 95 to 97, seemed to be setting us up for all kinds of just pure insanity, just trying to get your brain wrapped around. I borrowed the term many years ago, high strangeness, and I have referred to that for years in regards to anything that's considered paranormal. But we had all manner of that happen to us from the moment we moved to the French Quarter in 95 that seemed, as I said, to be preparing us for 97.
But personally, how did it affect your life? I know when I had my own experience, when I had my close encounter of the third kind, and this UFO from 150 yards away from me on the ground was turning its lights on and off at my command, it changed me. It changed me 5 days later when I saw my first extraterrestrial 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Did you have any of those life-altering effects, Alta, that really have affected you now 20 years later?
Absolutely, in 97. The 2 years prior to 97, absolutely, but they were coming at us in different forms. But in 97, when the three of us went poof off of that street at 11 o'clock at night, and, consciously no awareness. Now, I'm the only one out of the three of us that came back with memories of what I call the in-between experience. No memory of coming off the street, no memory of being returned home the next day. But I am the only one with memory. So absolutely it's changed me in every manner. I'm also the only one out of the three of us that we're aware of that has objects in my body from these experiences that you have the x-rays of. So, profoundly.
I want to get to missing time here for a second because you had missing time. I've never in any of my experiences had missing time. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But what is it like? How does that play on your mind when you have missing time?
In my case, again, I have missing time in my childhood that has haunted me all my life and can't seem to get answers to it. So that's more normal to me than not. The high strangeness of the missing time of these events, particularly in 97, is terrifying. My word, absolutely terrifying. I've never been able to come to terms with that. And again, it's extremely profound, but it is terrifying. Chad certainly has his thoughts about.
Well, before we get to Chad's thoughts, why is it terrifying for you?
Well, again, because, my childhood being missing, I'm told in my first memory, and then my mother backing it up with being tested for ESP in a military hospital. It's just, again, so I am raised an only child, so I have no one to reflect back on. I've never known grandparents, family, from that kind of a consciousness. There's never been a support system, as they say. So all I've had is me to try to understand and get answers and what have you. Missing time is absolutely terrifying. for somebody like myself, that's my choice of language, because I've been trying all my life to have answers. And, of course, it seems like the harder I try, the more questions there are. So in my particular instance, it's about trying to just find balance with what I can't get answers to.
Did you, Alta, have a lot of emotional up and downs with your experiences, and this first experience especially? I know when I had mine, I was so confused. There were times where I was angry. There were times where I would just sit back and cry and wonder, why me? Why is this happening to me? My life was so perfect until this came along. Did you go through those ups and downs as well?
Oh, absolutely, and still do. Again, you can't have... sorry, I'll just speak for myself. I've been walking around with an object in my upper arm from the 97 event that others call implants. I've chosen personally just to use the word unknown, referring to the object. But there was a moment, there are many folks over the years that have thought we've sounded so airy-fairy about all of this, or that we've made it all up, or whatever, folks are going to think. But the reality is every gamut of emotion. Our 97 event took place 3 months after the death of my mother. It happened to die on my birthday the minute I'm born. Now, again, it can't just be whatever normal is. It's not happening in my world. So Chad and I are so devastated over her death that let's top it off with, let's go bye-bye, off of the street at 11 o'clock at night and have these unbelievably bizarre experiences to then come to with an object in my upper arm that I'm so angry about, I can't think straight. One night I'm got a bottle of whiskey in my hand, an old black man who used to play with Jimi Hendrix back in the day, and who's now just this cool old man that had been my neighbor and just knew that I was losing my mind, and I'm threatening to cut this thing out of my arm, and he hands me a bottle of whiskey and gives me a big knife and a gauze, and, he's going to look after me. But he so understands what I am going through. And the moment I get the blade to my arm, and again, as dramatic as it sounds, this is my truth. I hear a voice inside my head. It's my voice, so I'm not hearing voices. But I hear my voice, but it doesn't feel like it's me doing it, saying, do you have any idea how bad that's going to hurt? And at that very moment, I was not drunk. I was conscious. I knew exactly what I was doing. And I stopped immediately and was able to calm down. But that gamut of emotion is from one end to the other. Absolutely.
And Chad, we only got about 3 minutes before we got to go to break here. I'm curious to eat up that time with your mindset going through all of this. Were you just as emotionally scarred by this event because you couldn't explain it for yourself?
Well, I'm kind of little less, maybe, I don't want to say high-strung, but, less emotional, I guess, on things sometimes. I kind of just, out of sight, out of mind, don't think about it, and, just kind of go on with life type person. So I tried not to. Now, when I thought about it, of course, it was an emotional thing, but it wasn't like it was eating me alive or anything like that. It was more like, don't think about it, and, just, I live in the moment.
Now, as we have about 2 minutes before we go to break, Chad, did you feel your life change from that moment as well?
Oh, yeah. It was like, other things are possible. It was very... there was an emotional roller coaster, of course, but as far as, like, not being able to sleep anymore. It kind of opens up your thoughts of possibilities of life in general, just life forever.
Do you feel, Chad, that this is something you would want other people to experience, or do you think that this is just for you, this experience to live and learn as part of your role in life?
Well, I think that if people, in my experience, I had a very positive experience. It was not scary or upsetting, or I was never hurt or probed or anything like that. So, I think there's a lot more people out there that have had experiences and possibly not even know it. So, would I wish it upon other people? Only if they're open to it.
Right. Chad and Alta, I'm going to get you guys to hold on here because we are going to hop out for our first break of the night. Chad and Alta Dillard are our guests tonight. They're going to tell their amazing story over the next couple of hours of their experiences with extraterrestrials that led to them writing the book Abducted in the French Quarter. Nice picture of Carl on the front, too. Although it looks a little bit different. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We will be back right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, Ian Holt will be back. Yes, our favorite movie director and Dracula author will be back for his bi-monthly segment. We're going to get into a little bit of music conspiracy tomorrow night and whatever else pops up around the paranormal. You know, with Ian, we can talk about anything, so that's where we're going to go. Your audience questions will be desired as well. Once again, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us. We're also on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Olesiosyllable. Olesiosyllable is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio during the show to connect with me live as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. You can tune us in on iHeartRadio in the United States. Tune in, iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Rock out to some Bumblefoot, watch some UFO Seekers or Contact TV videos, read up on the encounter online, or shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We'd love to have you do that and pick up a t-shirt and have some fun on our website. And you know, we're going to be starting pretty quickly here this new feature. We're going to put a collage of Spaced Out Radio listener pictures up. And I want your photos. You can send your photos to info@spacedoutradio.com. And what we want to do is we want to see how you soar. Of course, a little play on the SOR. We want to see how you soar. So if you have your Spaced Out Radio t-shirt on and you're walking around town, take a picture. Show us how you soar. Or if you're listening in during the show, we want to see what you're doing. You got stickers? Hell, show us where you're placing them. We want a collage of pictures from our listeners, from you guys and girls. Okay? Let us know how you soar. You can send it to info@spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking with Chad and Alta Dillard. They are UFO and ET experiencers. They have a great little book here called Orbducted in the French Quarter. Chad and Alta, welcome back. Thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us at SOR.
Thank you so much for having us.
Right before the break, we were talking about the emotional effects of having that first experience. Did you think that this would, Alta, lead to a lifetime of continued contact?
In my perspective, no, not from the 95 encounter. Not at all. Again, after having the first showing of this, what have you in the sky, it became, as I tried to state, for me, like a non-event. It's almost as if I erased it, although it's there. I can recall it, but I certainly had no interest in pursuing it.
How about you, Chad? Did you believe in it?
Exactly. Yeah, it didn't consume me. It was just a kind of what I would think would have been a one-time event. So as far as 95 up until then, I didn't really think anything was going to continue happening to us.
So take us down the timeline, Lynn. From this first experience to the next time you had contact, Alta, how long was that?
Well, contact, if you're speaking in terms of what others are calling UFO, alien, what have you, that took place in 97. As I was saying, we had our first visual in 95. Within a short amount of time of that experience, we then relocated to the French Quarter, and all manner of high strangeness started taking place there, everything inclusive of voodoo, hoodoo, witchcraft, time slips, what appeared to be a Virgin Mary-like apparition, possible slave, ghost or spirit of slaves from, or a time slip involving slaves from the 16 or 1700s that had lived on this property that we moved to. Chad having a direct, up-close and personal encounter with what we discovered was a voodoo priest that had lived on that property and had died just prior to us moving there. So in all manner of high strangeness seemed to be happening to us from 95 until that night in 97 that it took place with the three of us. If you want us to just go to that particular event, we certainly will.
Absolutely. Let's go there.
Okay, so now my mom, as I mentioned earlier, my mother was 24 hours of moving. She had left Louisiana and relocated back to Little Rock, Arkansas. Now we're in 1997. She had planned to relocate again to the French Quarter to live out her life with Chad and I there in the Quarter. She'd come for a visit. She fell in love with it. She'd been there many times in the past, and she wanted to spend the rest of her life there. She was in poor health. Chad and I had pre-rented her a mother-in-law cottage in the courtyard of where we lived. We had life all planned out. Too good to be true. I also, Chad has mentioned this many times in the past, I also started announcing a couple of years prior to my 40th birthday that I couldn't wait to turn 40 because I knew something big was going to happen, like life-altering, life-changing. I kept making this kind of crazy statement a few years prior to turning 40. And as Chad has mentioned many times, what woman says that? That's just crazy in itself. And yet that's what I was doing. Unpronounced to me, the big event was the death of my mom. She died on my 40th birthday, the minute I'm born, 24 hours before she was to arrive to live there. She died in Little Rock. Chad and I are thrown into massive shock and pain and all that entails. We go to Little Rock. We deal with that situation in terms of my inheritance, my mother's belongings. We get everything moved back to the Quarter. We try to just keep one foot in front of the other, but we are both very saddened. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm confused. All these kinds of emotions are going on with me. She is my only family besides Chad. So that in May, the one item that we chose to keep of my mom's, I kept my inheritance, but there were many things that we sold, found homes for, gave away as gifts. But one of the things that we chose to hang on to was my mother's telephone, because it was the last object that I'm aware of that my mom used to try to get help before she went unconscious. So without taking a lot of time up about that phone, but it is quite hysterical, scary as all get out, creepy as whatever, that phone was haunted. I use the word haunted because a woman that's with the phone company here in the state of Louisiana said that to me over the telephone when we could not get help over a phone that was acting very bizarre. So she actually said to me, did you ever think maybe it's haunted? Well, that took care of that. We found a home for that phone real quick. It went to a friend of ours who was very close to my mom, who was very sad about his death, and he wanted the phone. So we told him it was haunted. That's what the language was. He took his phone. And now this is, as I said, this is in May of 97. Move along 3 months. Now we're in September. About the time we're very close to now, 1997. Chad and I are both making a name for ourselves in the French Quarter. It's a very expensive place to live. We moved here extremely naive. We started gaining what I thought was some smartness about living in this kind of a community. I was working at the time for a very exclusive salon that was a family-owned business that had started their business back in 1929. Chad was in his own small business, again, making a good name for himself. The family that I worked for had hired a young woman that at the time she was 24, Chad was 30, and I had just turned 40. She was a transplant from another state. She had never been married and had no children. She's tall, slender, long blonde hair, very attractive, a no-drama queen kind of chick. She's very conscious. She's got an amazing laugh, a giggle, but she's just absolutely no drama queen. She seems to have a very strong right and wrong about her, and very fair. Even at 24 years old, when the first time I met her, I felt like she was familiar, like I had known her forever. And it didn't seem to be an age difference between us, to have that many years between us different. She had met my mother, and she saw the pain and all that I was suffering, and knew that Chad was suffering over the death of my mom. She asked me one night if I wanted to go out into the quarter and have dinner and drink. I accepted. I said, let's call Chad. I know he'll want to join along, and we want him to. We only lived a couple blocks from the shops. We called Chad. He wants to do this. He changes, gets all cleaned up, and he walks over to the shop. 3 of us walk out of the shop at 9:30. She locks the door, and we're going to start, the plan is we're going to start on one end of the French Quarter and just walk across the quarter, very spontaneous, no plans, just out to try to have a good time. From the moment we stepped out of the shop, now the French Quarter is about 13 blocks square. We're going to start literally at one end of Bourbon Street, the famous Bourbon Street, and just work ourselves, as I said, all the way across the quarter. From the moment we stepped out of the shop, I took note, and I actually said it out loud, something to the effect of it felt weird, like the vibe was off. And I've said this before, that's not something I generally go around saying, that kind of language, but I certainly did that night, because it felt, there's no other way to describe it. It just felt like, and I try to tell folks, you know your hood, you know your neighborhoods and your communities, and most folks are aware if something feels strange a lot of times or off, and that's how it began for us. We started off on Bourbon Street, and again, there's a great deal to all of this story, but for the purpose of just getting us to that actual street where the 3 of us last remember, we had, from the moment we started this evening, we stopped at 3 different locations across the quarter. There were basically no people. And when I say no people, there were no people. There were a few stragglers. There were a few humans, enough to make it at least seem like whatever normal is. But there was nothing normal about this night. It almost felt vacant. For instance, the first location we stopped was a huge bar, restaurant, dance club upstairs with a balcony, very large area. It had a huge courtyard. This place was known for its food and courtyard and restaurant and what have you. Not on this night. There's no wait staff. There are no patrons. There's one person on duty, and he happened to be a quasi-friend of ours that was a manager. And it went from strange to weirder and weirder, because each location that we stopped at, there would be one person inside the club, restaurant, whatever it was, and no patrons. So we never stopped at any of these places other than the first location. We just walk in, we'd see that there was no one there, and we'd say, well, this isn't a party. You know, where is everybody? This is what we kept saying. We finally get to the end of the quarter, and it was just one weirdness after another. We finally get to our last location. Just to kind of move the story along, I'm making it clear to Chad very privately, away from our friend, I just want to go home now. Those are the words I keep saying. I just want to go home. I'm so bored, I just want to go home. And that's around 11 o'clock at night. So that's what the 3 of us remember collectively. It's 11 o'clock p.m. I'll mention we've only been out an hour and a half. To the best of our knowledge, certainly to our conscious memory, we had nothing to drink, nor were there drugs, nor did there seem to be anybody around to drug us. We've been challenged a lot over that statement, but that is our reality. So, if you'd like, certainly you'll guide us as to how you'd like us to unfold that night for you, but we finally, some years later, found somebody that Chad was comfortable with to do regressions for Chad, and he has a full account of coming off that street and, his account of that night. But I'll mention, if you all are hearing this, I'm not mentioned in his experience at all. In my experience, I'm the only one out of the three of us that seems to have memory of the between. And in that memory, he and our friend are not involved in my experience at all. Our friend, she had a completely different experience that doesn't seem to involve either Chad or I. So, however you'd like us to share that.
We know about how you guys had 3 different experiences. I would love for you to break them down individually of what happened. Chad, we can start with you.
Certainly. Again, I remember the night being very strange, kind of Twilight Zone-y, out of the ordinary. And my last memory is kind of standing at mid-block on this stoop at this last location that we kind of stopped by to see what was going on. And again, not all of these places that we stopped by were like touristy. A lot of these places were like local, pubs and restaurants that usually has at least the locals out, playing. So again, very bored. Again, my last memory is standing there mid-block at the stoop, and Alta saying, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. Let's just call a taxi and let's just go home. Now, in my regression, what comes out is we're standing on that stoop. Jacqueline came back, our friend came down to join us, and I out of the corner of my eye, I kind of turn around and I see this very bright light coming from around the corner of the building. And I could kind of see it through the windows of the shop that was there. It was like it had these big glass picture windows I could kind of see through. And I get the girl's attention, and we walk around the corner to see what this light was, because it was so bright. And we get around the corner, take a couple of steps, and we see this orb, and it's probably about half a block down the street. It's probably about 15 foot off the ground. It's probably about 12 foot in diameter, and it's just this bright, white, energetic light, just pure and clean. And we stand there maybe 30 seconds at the most, and it just comes to us and just engulfs us. It abducts us. And my next memory is I'm walking down this corridor. The walls seem to be very smooth, no rivets, no bolts, no lines, everything just very gunmetal gray. The hallways kind of turning gently to the right. I was following this little being in front of me, and he was probably about 3.5, maybe 4 foot tall, big gray, pale gray, bulbous head, big bulbous head. Now, he wasn't wiry like the grays that you see on TV. He had substance to him. He was kind of dwarfish. He kind of waddled when he walked. He was wearing this skin-tight, one-piece black jumpsuit. I never saw him from the front. I only saw him from behind that I can remember. Preferably, I could see out of the corner of my eye a tall, blonde female walking beside me. Now, this does describe our friend that was with us, but, I didn't turn to look to see if this was our friend. My next memory is I'm in this room, and it just seems infinite. It just seems just huge. Now, I can't couldn't, it was very dark. I couldn't see how big the room was. I couldn't see any walls, but it just seemed huge. I could see my surroundings, my immediate surroundings, and then off in the distance to my left, I could see a long, tall, blonde female laying on an examining table. She was nude, but I didn't see any body parts. I couldn't tell who it was. It was kind of blurred, like they do on the body parts, on regular TV and stuff, when they don't want you to see things. There were 3 beings around her, one on each side, one at her head. They were probably, I would say, 7-8 foot tall, very buggy, praying mantis-y kind of looking, big, almost rounded triangle kind of shaped heads with their mouth kind of down close to their chin, big almond-shaped eyes. Their arms were kind of crooked and bent like a praying mantis-y kind of thing. They were wearing these black cloaks, almost like a Grim Reaper without the hoodie, or a Jesuit priest or something like that. And now this person on the table never seemed to be in distress or hurting or in pain, almost like unconscious or unaware of anything going on with this person. I didn't see any kind of probing or any kind of instruments used on her. I've focused my attention back to my immediate, and I look over to my right, and I see this little blue being. Now, he looks body-shaped and all, like the graves that you see on TV, like Communion or something like that, big, again, bulbous head, almond-shaped eyes, very small slit for the mouth. But his color was this vibrant, lovely, just electric blue. And his aura, his presence, was that of like a professor / shaman / scientist, just this old, just, unbelievable knowledge and wisdom and healing. And he goes over and he picks up this box, and he has it in his right hand. He takes his left hand and puts it into the side of the box. And when he pulls his hand out, there's this substance kind of free-floating a couple inches off of the palm of his hand, around the palm of his hand. Now, he's only got 4 digits as far as fingers are. So he takes his right hand, and I don't even remember him putting the box down or anything. He takes his right hand. Now, this substance that's kind of free-floating above him, it's blue, just kind of like he is, this bright, electric, neon, just beautiful blue. And it had like little sparkly things, like glitter or metal shavings or something like that in it. But anyway, he takes his right hand and he puts it up. Now, he's only got 4 digits. He takes his 2 middle fingers and puts them up almost kind of like a peace sign. And his outer fingers he folds in towards each other. And almost like a priest or a monk or Buddha would do. And when he does this blue substance starts kind of spinning. And the faster it spun, the blueness and the sparkles kind of dissipated out of it and kind of rotating and orbiting around it. And it starts slowing down, and it turned into this, like, double-pointed crystal, very clean crystal, double-pointed pyramid. And I remember thinking to him, why are you showing this to me? You know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. You know, why are you showing this to me? And he told me that I would know in time, or when it's time. Now, my next memory is I'm in this other room. There's only 3 walls, 2 that are very straight, 1 that's kind of concave. There's this overstuffed black leather chair in the middle, and I remember thinking to myself how out of place it is, and it looks comfortable, but it's not. So I never even sat in it. I focused my attention and walked a little closer to this wall that's concave. Now, all the walls that, when I look at the walls and everything, you know, everything's that, again, gunmetal gray, no bolts, no rivets, no seams, anything like that, very smooth. But I focused my attention back to this wall that's kind of concave, and what I thought was a solid wall, when I walk a little closer to it, I can see through it. And, you know, it's probably 15, 16, almost probably even 18 foot long and, you know, 10 foot tall. So it's just this big window wall. And I can see through it, and I can see stars and the galaxy and planets, and it's like I'm out in space. And I'm just kind of, you know, absorbing it and kind of taking it in and in awe. And I'm just like, you know, maybe 5, maybe 6 foot away from it. And about that time, this little craft outside this window wall shoots past. And it gets about, you know, 8, 9, 10 foot past me, and it stops. And it's moving pretty fast, but it just stops, just in a blink of an eye. And it comes back, and it's like right in, you know, just right outside in front of me. And it's got like little metal antennas and wires moving around on it and shifting around and little lights blinking and all this. And it's kind of a football or rugby-shaped ball shaped. It's about 3 foot long, 2 foot at the width, at its widest. So it's not very big. And it sits there like surprised to see me as I was it. I could feel intelligence coming out of it. And all of a sudden it shoots off again, going in the direction that it was going in the first place. And my next memory is waking up in bed the next morning.
That is detailed, Chad. That is very detailed. How were you able to remember such detail of it? Because so many experiencers only get a couple second clips in their brain, and they can't tell whether or not it was a dream or whether it was an actual abduction or contact.
Well, we do have a tape now. It's a very poor quality tape of the regression, so I was able to recall that. I did some drawings afterwards. You can see them on our Facebook page. I don't know if you have them, but they're on our Facebook page of the blue being that I encountered and the crystal part. And we've been sharing our story for many years now, so it kind of keeps me refreshed in my memory. So that's one thing.
May I also interject on this point, though? We'd like for anybody who's kind enough to be hearing us to remember that Chad and I are very open, with some caution now. We're not as naive as we were when we started all of this, to find somebody who cares about what's happening with us to do regression again. In his case in particular, because this woman that did the regression, they had a good rapport, she and Chad, but we learned after the fact that she had never dealt with this particular subject before. So it was very clear to me, as I wasn't in the room with the regression. I was wise enough not to do that, but it was done at our home, she and Chad in a private room. And I could hear very clearly that every time Chad would start to describe a different being that he was encountering, she would become afraid and she would move him away from it. And so there was never any doubt to either one of us. There's much more in there on Chad's part. And in my case, I paid somebody a lot of money to regress me that didn't like me. And, there was some kind of a personal issue going on that I just don't understand. But whatever the case, it didn't work. So we are both very open to this.
As you should be. So, Chad, getting back to your experiences, you seem to have seen a multitude of different beings in this encounter, from grays to mantids to what we may consider a blue avian. I had never heard of all three being together at once. I knew the grays were kind of like worker bees for other species of extraterrestrial. Were you surprised to see those different beings all culminated? Or I guess at that point, when you're going through this, you don't know any different, do you?
No, in my regression, because, after our experience, we did start kind of exploring missing time, and, Alta does have recall on part of her missing time. So, once we started, I started getting a little more familiar. And then when I had my regression, I'd never heard of, you can hear it in my voice. Now, again, very poor quality in the taping, but you can hear it in my voice how surprised I am that he is blue, that he is just this vibrant blue. At that point, I'd seen, Taken or Fire in the Sky and Communion. So, I was kind of familiar with the grays, and everybody's seen, Close Encounters, of course. But, I'd never heard of mantids or, these blue avians, I guess, as everybody, because nobody... These people never told me what they were or who they were that I can remember. So, I try to stay, open-minded. But I've never heard of any of these type of beings, so I had no, education. So I didn't know what was going on or who I was with.
Now, Alta, you had a different experience. Were you in a different part of the same craft, or were you on a separate craft altogether?
So I don't know how to, I don't have any answers, which makes people very frustrated with me. But again, repeating it as I understand it, 1 minute I'm on that street, on that stoop, and the next thing I know, I'm now standing on the edge of what appears to be a very large crater. Now, just to paint the picture of what's going on around me, it appears that it looks like the coloring, and just try to get this effect in your mind, it looks like I'm standing on or in a black and white movie of the so-called moon landing, because that's the environment and that's the coloring. As I look down in that crater, as I say, I'm on the edge. My toes are on the edge of it. And as I look down in the crater, there appears to be a metallic, some kind of structure at the very bottom of this large crater. The structure is either a hangar, a warehouse, or it could have been a craft, because things are happening very fast, very fast. So I'm only just having enough time to observe quickly. What I also observed is there's no movement down there. Nothing appears to be moving. Now, my gaze comes up out of the bottom of the crater, and I'm aware there's something behind me. I pivot around, kind of halfway around. I don't completely turn around. And now there are, and this is a difficult part for me to express to people, because it just feels ridiculous, and it also feels really bad behavior on my part, which appears to be a few people, human-looking people, all dressed, different ages, male and female, what I call dog piles on top of each other. They appear to be in suspended animation, no distress. Nobody looks in pain of any kind. I have just enough time to take that in, and then next thing I know, everything again happening this quickly, there's something standing right next to me on the edge of that crater. I pivot back around, and it is, now that's the artist's rendition on the back of our book, that blonde woman. She is now standing next to me. She is over 6 feet tall. She is wearing a bodysuit. Whatever it is that's covering her body is like, like skin, but it's some kind of a suit, I think. She has long blonde hair. And the only other way I know how to describe this experience is, and I'd like for people to hear this, I don't care who she is. I have no interest in asking her any questions. I am so joyous, so excited, so happy to be with her. She, I've said this before as well, if I'd had a tail, it was wagging like a puppy. I felt like a child. I was just in the company of, I don't know, but I felt like I was home. That's the word that kept coming to me, which is weird because that's what I remember saying to Chad on that street, on the corner, essentially. I just want to go home. In this experience, I feel like I am home. And whoever she is feels like an extension of me, like a connection. So in that state of bliss, now I look up above us into the night sky. It's pitch black out there with what appear to be diamond-y-looking stars. So beautiful. As I'm just beyond myself happy. I also mentioned I have no recall, no memory, no consciousness at all of Chad, my life, this place, my puppies that are my life, my children in that regard. No consciousness of any of that. No thought of any of that. So as I look up at those stars, I'm so happy I'm home. And then all of a sudden one of those stars began to move. And then others joined in. And in the time that it took for the first star to start to move, I started shifting that quickly out of a state of bliss to a state of terror. Somehow or other, if there is such a thing as logic, it popped in at the very moment that the star began to move. And I immediately had some kind of weird consciousness of that can't happen. That's impossible. And in that same consciousness, that same thought process, my heart started beating, as I've said, out of my chest. I was so afraid. When I shifted into that state of fear, she spoke to me telepathically in a voice and a tone that I can't imagine ever duplicated. It was so beautiful. And I'd like for you to know that I've had a lot of years to contemplate all of this. I'm not delusional, I feel, in any way. It could be that this is all, as people have indicated, planted memories, whatever. But I am relaying it exactly the way I have remembered it always. She spoke to me telepathically, and she called me by name, and she spoke English. But again, in this beautiful tone. And she said, Alta, don't be afraid. They're just scanning you. And when she said that, those last words, what penetrated me, and then the next thing I know, I didn't wake up. I came to, sitting up in my living room the next day. The sun was glaring through my window. It was somewhere between 8 and 9 the next morning. And I was rubbing my arm, and I felt something in my upper arm. And that was my first awareness that I was no longer on that crater.
Did you feel that fear throughout, or did it just come to you before they relaxed you? Because, and I asked that, Alta, because when I woke up on the table, when they were cutting me open to implant me in the back of my head, I had that utter fear as well. I felt the pain, I was screaming, and then I was overcome with some very calming words that said, it doesn't hurt. And as I focused in on those words that it doesn't really hurt, the pain went away. And it actually, I hate to say this, it felt kind of cool. Did you have that type of experience where it just calmed you right down, like, immediately?
No, I was in the beginning of all of it before her. I always refer to as her. I'm curious. I don't remember having any fear. I just remember being I've always been very curious because I've had, as I said before, a lot of mystery in my life. So I've always tried to stay open to understand. So I'm in that state of curiosity. I'm puzzled. I have a moment of not liking my behavior when I saw those people, and I'm not running to them to try to help. That was, I had just enough moments to process all of this. Well, this is weird. But I don't have any fear. Not until the stars began to move. I shifted that quickly. Because the whole time that I'm with her, I'm beyond joyous. I have no words to describe the state of ecstasy that I felt until the star moved. And once that began, I shifted that quickly into my words, maybe overdramatic, but terror.
Right. I have some questions from Trip in the audience, a hat trick of them. Were all of your experiences in Louisiana?
No.
Where else did they happen?
Well, again, to hear my mother say it, it would appear some desert. I have no idea what desert. Some desert that I'm presuming in the United States in the end of 57, beginning of 58. She claims a craft encounter. Then, now of course I have no memory of any of this. My ESP testing, first memory in Aurora, Colorado. That would have been in about 1966, 67, 66, I believe, somewhere in that time frame. Then the ghosty kind of stuff, the high strangeness in that regard, throughout my life in the Midwest, until, it has been somewhat kind of, nothing that has been overwhelming, but certainly on my awareness, pretty much all my life in regards to some other energy that is not considered normal. And then, of course, we had I'm absolutely convinced, there is no doubt to me, but there's no way that I can prove it, that Chad and I were arranged by this hidden hand in 1990, Little Rock, Arkansas.
And then we've had experiences since our 97 experience. We moved on to Alabama, which we had quite a few experiences.
We had the most bizarre experiences in the mountains of New Mexico.
Yeah.
That we lived for a period of time. More high strangeness when we had to go back to Denver, Colorado in the year 2000 for my job against my will. We managed, in 99, we managed to land back there against my will, but I had to do this for my job, just in time for Columbine to explode up the street from us, going through that absolute insanity.
It has, as Chad said. And we've traveled the last 5 years in a motor coach and
around the Ohio Valley.
Around the Ohio Valley, Serpent Mound, those type areas, and I've had sightings there also.
As well as Sasquatchy experiences, both Chad and I, and other UFO, and yeah.
The Sasquatch are a beautiful creature when you see them.
Mm.
I'm a big fan of them.
Never seen them, but have heard them. I'm a country boy. I know the sounds of the forest. We were up in Ohio, kind of close to Serpent Mound and I think the Waverly area, maybe.
Right.
And up on this, nice little mountain, family-owned RV park that the family owns, for generations. And I go out. We get set up. I get the girls out. We've got a couple of cattle dogs, Australian shepherd dogs, and we go out. I take them out, and just getting dark, we start coming back to the motor coach, and just a few feet away, and I hear this. I call it a grunt snort. It was like kind of sound, almost like a pig and bear mix almost. And I stopped and looked over, didn't see anything. The dog stopped and looked over, didn't go, if it had been an animal, usually they're ready to, go chase it through the woods. And this time they kind of looked at me and we're like, okay, we jumped inside the house real quick, and I tell Alta, and she's like, oh my God, Sasquatchy. So she goes, we had just cooked little hot dogs and macaroni and cheese earlier, so I was just like, we gotta make him a plate. We gotta give him an offering, So she goes, we make the plate up, and with our hot dogs and our cheese curls and chips and chocolates and little cinnamon jellies, the little cinnamon jellies with the sugar kind of around it, on a paper plate. I take it out. We set it on this fallen tree that was out beside the motor coach here, and I set it where if anything disturbs it, it's going to fall, especially if it's something that's not intelligent, not highly intelligent, I guess I should say. And so we go to bed. Before I could even get my eyes open the next morning, I was just like, go check the plate. I pry my eyes open, walk by the coffee machine and turn it on, and put my house shoes on, and I go out there, and the plate is sitting in the exact same spot I left it in, up on top of that fallen tree, but everything's off of it except those cinnamon jellies. And I look around, there's no scat, there's no nothing like if a dog or a coon or anything like that. There's no tracks. There's no, if it had been a canine of any kind, you would have think if he grabbed the food off the plate that it would have knocked the plate off and there would have been crumbs all over the place. And, but no, it was perfect. There was no, disturbance of any kind around it. So we tell the people that own it, we talk to them later on and come to find out the Sasquatch hunters or Bigfoot hunters or whatever it was had just been up the month before and stopped to talk to them, had stopped there and talked to them or something like that. But apparently it's a highly active area, that part of Ohio.
Try being here in British Columbia.
Yeah, I hear that's even more so.
Our Sasquatch area just got burned out, so we got to find a new one now. Got to find a new one.
Yeah, we're so heartbroken and are praying for you guys. Definitely.
Thank you. Very, very much appreciative. I want to get to we only got about 90 seconds left, and Trip, I'm going to ask your questions after the break, but I'll ask this one quickly. And Alta, if you could keep it within 60 seconds, that would be great. Which side of the moon did you actually see, and could you see Earth?
No idea, and no. No idea which side of wherever I was. And I could not see anything but my immediate around me within, several feet. It was pitch black.
That had to be just irritating, not being able to see. Like, you couldn't see stars or anything?
Well, sure. I'm sorry. At the end of my experience, I looked up and I saw what looked like diamonds. They were so beautiful stars. But when the experience began, my first moment of conscious of, recall is I'm standing on the edge of a crater looking down in it. These orbs it seems to have a perimeter of orbs of light that seem to be the lighting of this immediate area.
All right, you guys hold on. We're going to hop out here for our second and final break of the night. Our guests tonight on Spaced Out Radio are Chad and Alta Dillard. They have a great little book called Abducted in the French Quarter. I highly suggest you pick it up. Go onto their Facebook page. They can tell you where to get it. I love talking alien abduction. As an experiencer myself, it is something that absolutely enthralls me when I get to hear people's stories about what is going on. And we're going to get more in the next hour with Chad and Alta right after this. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this break. Stay tuned.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio. And on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to anymore.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we got one of our fan favorites coming back. Ian Holt will be back with us. We're talking everything to do with music conspiracy. We might get into the whole Suge Knight, Tupac Shakur death. we're going to get into some paranormal, maybe some UFOs, and we'll see where it goes. Because we never really script it with Ian. We just kind of go with the flow. I throw the questions in my notebook out the window, and we just let it ride. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well at the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Thank you so much for tuning us in. We're live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Olesiosyllable. Olesiosyllable is your password for the night. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others from iTunes. We're also on iHeartRadio in the United States. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rocking to Bumblefoot, joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Read The Encounter online. Buy yourself a t-shirt or some stickers or a poster in our store. Watch Contact TV or UFO Seekers. Read my latest blog and so much more. spacedoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, I introduce Chad and Alta Dillard. They are experiencers telling an amazing story about their own abductions. They have a book out called Abducted in the French Quarter. Chad and Alta, welcome back.
Thanks again for having us, and we're glad to be back.
I'm glad you guys are having a lot of fun with this, because the one thing I was saying during the break, and I'll fill our audience in here, it's great when we get people on here, who are professionals in doing what they're doing, but to get actual experiencers on, it's difficult because you have to vet them so much and see that their story is complete. And you guys seem to be so tapped into your own experiences. I commend you guys for coming on in here and sharing it with our audience. Appreciate that.
Again, we thank you. We enjoy sharing our experiences, and it helps us, and I hope and feel that it helps other people that are going through this that aren't ready to actually say to a friend or to the public, hey, I've seen this, I've experienced this. So, again, we enjoy being able to share it with people.
So when you guys had this abduction experience, did you have any further experiences much like this one, or were you guys kind of one and done with the main taking that you went under regression with? Alta?
So again, I lovingly and laughingly say, lucky me, we can fast forward now from 97, where the three of us have this experience. May I share with you very quickly, because I've always found it interesting. I think it's not boring. If I might share with you what happened to our friend that night that the three of us were taken, if you're interested.
Absolutely. And what's her name again? Christine?
We have changed her name in the book, and she is noted in the book as Christine.
Sure, fill us
now,
in.
She has given us permission. We are still connected all these years later, long distance. She has given us permission to speak on her behalf, because she made it very clear from the jump that she had no interest in coming forward or being public about any of this. But when I told her years later that I would not stop, in the intent of just trying to find others, at the time I thought I was trying to find help, what have you, she understood that, and and I understood gave us her blessing in that regard. I did get her a portion of the experience in writing online, but she's fairly blank, I saw. She's got a lot of what appears to be somewhat missing from the way Chad and I remember that night with her, that she's somewhat moved beyond, I think, when she even put it in writing several years later. But this is her account. She remembers again collectively on the corner with us at 11. And then the next thing she knows is she is now behind the steering wheel of her moving car. It's moving slowly. She said that it hit a parked car and knocked off her rear view mirror, which is what she said is what jolted her too. Also, the car is in a whole other section of the city from where we all knew that she had parked the car that morning. It's somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning, so she has from 11 until then completely wiped clean. There's nothing in between there. I'm sorry, if I might back up very quickly. Prior to the night that the three of us, as I lovingly say, went poof off that street, she had shared with me privately, and I feel that the reason she chose me to share this with is that she has a love of Earth. She has gone on to get a degree in environmental science. You know, when I say she loves Earth, she loves Earth. Very scientific, what have you. So what she shared with me is so out of character for how we knew her and know her. But this is what she said to me just very briefly prior to us being taken that night, just within a matter of a week, couple weeks, somewhere in that time frame. She was dating a guy for a very, I always say a minute, just for a very brief time in her life. Keep in mind, again, she's only 24 at the time. He was her, what I say, polar opposite. His name, Will. I called him Dark Boy. He was as adorable as she is, but he was just her opposite. She's very bright and light and what have you. He had long, very dark hair, but he also had a darkness about him. Certainly I remember him nice enough, but just this kind of, darkness about him. So I nicknamed him Dark Boy. I wasn't around him very much. She didn't date him very long. When she decided to not see him any longer, dating purposes, she invites him over to her house. It's during the daytime. So she's got, pure daylight to see what happened to her, what she experienced. She's standing on the front porch of her apartment. He's just a couple inches in front of her. She gives him I'm paraphrasing this, I like your butt kind of story. I want to see other people. She says that he starts to become, again, my words, emotionally unglued from the inside out. It's like he starts to shake to some degree. She said that in that emotional shift, she said he turned into a wolf. She said that she turned her head away from it just as fast as she could, just like I did when I saw that floating city back in 95. So I understood exactly what she was saying to me, because she was in shock. She said when she turned her head back, he had shifted human and then shifted a second time in front of her. She said, and I'll clean the language up, in a very commanding voice, you just turned into an effing wolf. And she said that he was extremely startled and responded back to her, you saw that. Now, as I've said before, she didn't need proof to see what she saw, but he gave her that proof in his response. Now, if we can fast forward, her car seems to be driving itself, but now she's coming to and getting her thoughts together, but she's still not in control. It's going to his house. Now, this is somebody she would never see again, the intention, because that's so out of her, as they say, paradigm. That would not be something she'd be inviting any longer. But that's where she ends up, in his hood, at somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning. Not a nice neighborhood. for her to be in at that time of the morning. He lives in a house that's been divided up into like a fourplex, a big old house. It's got a big iron fence around it with a gate that's always, of course, shut and locked, but of course, just like a bad movie, not this morning, the gate's open. She says she parks the car, gets out, goes up the steps. He's sitting right inside the front door. It's either got a screen or just the door is open. She said he's under some kind of lighting fixture, like an overhead lamp. He's playing guitar. She said he stopped playing guitar. She steps up inside the house, and he says to her, either I've been or we've been waiting for you. She said she continues to walk up closer to him. Again, so out of character, out of behavior. And she said that she becomes, again, the words controlled hysterical. Starts crying. He puts the guitar down, guides her into a room, lays her down. She said she cried herself to sleep. Again, very out of character for her. It must have only been a very short time, like an hour or so, because she said the sun is just starting to rise. When she wakes up, she said that she's completely dressed. It doesn't appear that he has done anything to her. She said she gets up, and she gets the cleaning up the language, clock out of Dodge, and doesn't look back. Now, if I might again, just to finish that portion of the story up, that's her account. This was in 97. If we may now fast forward to 2001. Chad and I have already been to New Mexico, had the most bizarre experiences. Back up to Denver, bizarre experiences. Back to New Orleans. In 2001, Chad and I started to, as I call it, implode. Our lives fell apart. He made the decision to leave New Orleans and go to Alabama to work for his father, where his family lived. I chose to stay behind. It didn't take long of our separation for both of us, me in particular, not to be doing very well. Physically, emotionally, it was just extremely difficult. One day I come out of work, and I'm in the French Quarter. It's a beautiful day, and the streets are packed like normal. And I hear somebody yell my name, my unusual name. I see a person I hadn't seen in a few years. This guy is extremely tall and very slender, which makes him look even taller. His name is Rich. This guy is an artist who happens to be originally from Montauk, New York. I didn't know anything at the time about Montauk. I've discovered a great deal about that area since, and all of its unusualness. He asked me if I wanted to have a drink. We go to a little cafe on the street, an outdoor cafe. And the time it took him to roll a cigarette, he ordered a Coke. I think I ordered a beer. I don't remember, again, even having time to drink the beer. We're having just conversation. He's discovering Chad and I have separated. He sounds extremely distraught about this. And we're having that conversation. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he shifts from that conversation to, hey, have you heard about Will? Now, that caught me as off guard as I'm just repeating this to you. In my shock, I basically get back around to, how do you know Will? And what do you mean, have I heard about him? I said, are you talking about Dark Boy? And he's indicating to me that Will has gone around telling everybody. Now, I had not seen this guy since 97, this Will character. Anyhow, his friend Rich is saying that Will is going around telling everybody, whatever that means, community, that he's catching a bus out of town because the aliens are after him. Now, this conversation comes out of left field. At that very moment, now my friend Rich, who's just dropped that on me, pretty much politely tells me he's got to go. We stand up, we hug goodbye, and in that very moment, I feel pissed. I feel angry. I feel I felt like I was on a candid cam, and I was looking all around for where are the freaking cams? This can't be really happening. I didn't just really go through that and just hear this crazy. So I thank you for letting me share all that with you, but that is her story.
At what time during this, around 1997, did you start believing that this is what actually happened? Was it not until the regression that this happened, Chad, that you started believing it? Or did you know that something strange and odd happened that you needed to figure out? Did you have any clue whatsoever?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I knew something bizarre, out of the ordinary happened. Yeah, and another thing, when I woke up that next morning in bed, after my experience, I get up out of bed, and Alta's walking towards me, and I'm like, what happened? How did we get home? And she's like looking at me like, I was hoping you would tell me. And she shows me this, her arm, on her left arm, and explains about this object she finds in her arm. And as I'm looking at her arm, I noticed these, 3 or 4 long, very long, handprints or fingerprints around both of her arms. So I knew something bizarre happened. What happened, I didn't know. I didn't know if it was, ghosty or out-of-worldly or what it was, but I did know that something very strange. I knew that, nobody drugged us or anything like that because I woke up clear-headed, except I just didn't know how we got home.
That has to be the eeriest feeling, because you didn't drink, you know that something strange happened, and to go from one place which you remember to the next and not knowing what happened in between. Tell our audience, Chad, what an odd feeling that's like, because you had to have a plethora of emotions and questions going through you at that time.
Oh, definitely. I was just, it's just a state of confusion of, what had happened.
I got a question from Dennis here in the chat room, and Alta, we'll start with you on this one. Do you both feel the feeling of the other's experiences or other experiencers? Euphoria or anger? Experiencers usually have a takeaway from the experiences as a whole beyond the initial experience. What is your opinion of that, Alta?
Well, I have, for some interesting reason, not had a lot of encounters that I'm aware of on a physical or up close and personal basis with other experiencers, with the exception of, we had a young couple that we've become very close to that we're now out of state from, that live in the Ohio area. And they came, we're in a motorhome. They have no children either, and they came to spend some time with us while we were in the mound. I'm not sure if you're aware of Serpent Mound, Ohio, but it is just this, it's becoming quite a well-known area now. I've been aware of it all my life because my mother, for some reason, had a strong desire to get me, it seems, around the country to these different locations of what they call these sacred mounds. But anyhow, we happened to be staying very close to that location, and the couple came and stayed with us. And while they were staying with us, we went out and built a campfire, as you spoke about earlier in the show. It was one of the few times we've done this. And the 4 of us had a full night of events in the sky, from one horizon of the sky to the other. Now, all 4 of us were experiencing something that was so amazing, and it felt so personal that we were all in that same space of understanding, without understanding at all what was going on all night long, for hours, for us. And just, moments of gratitude of this happening, lots of curiosity, just, an array of emotions. But I've not had enough, I look forward to it, but I've not had enough experience of being with other experiencers.
Being in New Orleans, there's so much strange that happens in New Orleans. Did you chalk it up to that city's energy, the voodoo, the hoodoo history going along with that? Did that affect what you guys were going through at all?
No, we did have some experiences with that, but as far as this main experience with this Night of Missing Time, I didn't associate it with any kind of voodoo or hoodoo or witchcraft or ghosts or anything like that. I knew that it was something different.
But we also then, from that event, within a year, leave Louisiana, relocate to New Mexico, and start having a whole different type of array of high strangeness up in those mountains of New Mexico, as well as, if you're aware of the gentleman, I'm not sure if you've interviewed him or not, I would think so, Andrew Bishago. This guy I didn't know anything about when all this is happening. I don't think anybody knew about him back in 97, 98, 99. But for some unbelievable reason, but there's got to be reason, Chad and I end up living in this small community, an artisan community called Madrid, New Mexico.
I'm going to stop you right there, because my Sunday host, Elizabeth Anglin, has one of those shops in Madrid, New Mexico.
Right. Right. I have reached out to her. I discovered that after listening to your show, and when I discovered that, when this all first originally happened to us, my intention after the event in 97, and then all of the other high strangeness that was involved with New Mexico, Colorado, back to New Orleans, then into Alabama. Oh my God, Alabama. So with all of this happening to us, my intention from the very beginning was to get to Dr. John Mack at Harvard, because I'd always understood, if you're going to do it big. Try to find the absolute best. And my understanding of Dr. Mack at the time was, all I knew is that he was a psychiatry/medical doctor. I had an unknown in my upper arm, and I needed help. And so that's where I was headed. I was doing everything I could to get my brain wrapped around that and to go to that area, and then, of course, he was killed, and that took care of that. So when I discovered that Miss Anglin was connected through him from the beginning, that definitely got my attention. And then I did a little bit of looking, and I'm not good with the computer, but I know how to Google. And I saw that she lived in Madrid, and I absolutely could not believe what I was seeing. Because our experiences there were prior, I believe, to her moving there. I'm not sure of her history, but again, it was unbelievable what we were experiencing in that area. And what I started to say is that Madrid is only a couple of miles from this community called Cerrillos, New Mexico, that looks like something straight out of a cowboy movie. It has not progressed, or at least it certainly hadn't when we were there, one iota from the 1800s. Well, this area, this community, is an area that Andrew Bishago claims that when he's a child, he time portaled into out of California or New Jersey. But this is where they are time portaled to. And I'm like, what the hey, this is so crazy. Because again, it was just one high strangeness event after another. When keeping it around these unknown objects that people call implants, I've just chosen not to use that language, but I certainly understand everyone else doing so. Chad and I had reunited in 2001. We separated for 3 months, came back to New Orleans, got me, and moved me to Alabama. At that time, we're buying a home kind of out in the rural, small-town lake community. One night, we go to bed. It's always that bedtime thing. We go to sleep. The next thing I know, I'm conscious, and I'm standing out in my backyard, and it's in the middle of the night. I have no recall ever in my life of of walking in my sleep. So all of a sudden, I'm awake, and I'm like, what the hey am I doing here? And then in that very moment, as I'm scanning around my backyard with my eyes trying to take this in, I'm aware that there's something standing right next to me, but it's only about thigh high. And this is just the impression that I had in my head, because I couldn't see. Cousin It, if you know what I'm talking about. Cousin It from, I don't even know, the Addams family.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what the impression was that was standing next to me. So as that's, hitting me, is that impression is in my mind. In the same moment, before I can do anything about that, now my head goes backwards, kind of wrenches back. My eyes go up into the sky. My gaze goes up into the sky because I've got a voice that's speaking to me, above me, out of the heavens, kind of to the left of me. And it's her. It's her voice. Only this time, and it's that tone that is so beautiful. But this time now she's speaking a language I have no understanding of. I have no idea what she's saying. I don't really care too much because I'm so happy it's her, but I do remember being puzzled. Next thing I know, as I'm trying to move towards that sound, like fly towards that, all of a sudden now I have another voice coming out from the right above me and to the right a bit, again out of the heavens. This time it's in English, it's a male. It sounds pissed off at me like an angry dad or father to a child kind of tone. I immediately become very, very afraid. And in that fear, the voice calls me by name. And he said in the nastiest tone, Alta, don't bother being afraid. And the moment those words penetrated me, my wrist of the same arm that I have the unknown in the upper arm, that wrist exploded in light. And I've said this before, there was never any pain at all connected to this, no pain at all, but it was as if there was a bomb of light that went off in my wrist. And in that very moment is my last memory. And then the next thing I know, I'm waking up in bed the next morning. I'm waking Chad up, and I'm telling Chad that I have another object now in my wrist. So that has been, this object in the wrist won't take an X-ray at all. I've tried to X-ray it, but it has been detected with ultrasound. So I knew it was there, but I had a friend that there was an ultrasound tech that I'm pretty sure thought I had lost my mind. And so she chose to scan my wrist and discovered.
Does your implant move?
Now, the object in my wrist, as I said, there was no pain in the experience. But it seems that the moment I started questioning it, like really questioning, was I crazy? Had I created this? This object did seem to move, but not only did it move, what I mean by move is I'm gauging that by swelling. Several days I went through hell for several days with my wrist looking almost deformed. It was swollen in different areas, and it was large, and it was extremely painful. I refused to go to a doctor. I just was privately losing my mind, and I was suffering. Now, Chad was my only witness to this, but I did experience this. The object in the upper arm does seem to do tricks. That's what I call it. When I went to get x-rays via Dr. Roger Lear, who requested those x-rays, it refused to take a picture the first 2 times. Now, this object it seems to be underneath the top layer of skin. Where right now I'm touching it, it's sticking out in my arm. It feels like a big lump, a big bug bite. Sometimes it seems to move down to the bone, where only I know it's there. There's no scarring. There's no entrance wound of any kind. You cannot look at my arm with the naked eye and see that there is anything there unless it's standing out in my arm like a bite. Same as if you saw a big mosquito bite or maybe a bee sting swell kind of thing. It also seems, I cannot prove anything, but it seems to change shape. So,
well, that's odd that it would change shape. I've heard of ones moving, especially if they are almost being extracted. It's almost like they have a mind of their own to, move away from any type of potential extraction. Is yours metallic? Has it been picked up on any type of scanner?
Only on the ultrasound. Daryl Sims ran some of his gadgets on my arm, and it seemed to, whatever was going on in front of this little audience that was watching us, it seemed to register to the point of where everybody was kind of oohing and ahhing, but nothing panned out with Daryl any further about all of that. So I've tried the magnet business. That doesn't do anything using magnets. I've tried, some of this stuff that I've heard and researched and what have you. Let me also remind, the fact that this object chose to purposely not allow a picture of it the first 2 times. The x-ray tech that was responsible for taking the picture started becoming very afraid. The medical doctor involved in this case in the first place. Now, nobody believes me about any of this, and that's been heart-wrenching for Chad and I because of what we went through to get these x-rays. I won't bother everybody with these details, but the fact is, this object, as you mentioned, they do have a mind of their own, and for whatever reason wanted to put everybody through hell. The first night I went to go get the x-ray. It only allowed a picture the 3rd time. Now the object is sticking out of my arm as the x-ray tech is looking at me saying, there's nothing there. Now she's looking at my arm and she sees my arm has got this lump. So it wasn't until I finally kind of said to the heavens, throw a dog a bone, I have got to have this picture. Because Dr. Lear wasn't going to speak to me without it. And on the 3rd try is these pictures that you have. As mundane as that object looks, it is far from it.
Does your implant pulsate when it's activated? For instance, the one in the back of my head, if I'm around extraterrestrials, it will pulsate. Or if I tell the story about what happened to me, it actually starts to pulsate as well. Does yours?
I don't necessarily feel that would be inappropriate for me to describe with mine. I wish I could say yes, because it would make more sense almost to me. But it has just been so strange with these unknowns that I would just offer this as far as my take on any of this about the unknown. I've chosen the word unknown, particularly in my case, as irritating as it is to people, just because I have no memory of anything being implanted in me. So I've always suggested, and I continue to do this for myself, for my own benefit, my own welfare. I suggest, let's say it didn't come with the package. How do I know that I'm not born with this or created with these, and somehow or other they became activated? This I don't know. I have no idea. But the unknown, the reason the word unknown is because if there is truth to what this man posted, this man is a physicist. I'm not sure theoretical or what particular field, but he is a physicist that was a part of Dr. Roger Lear's team of experts that supposedly studied these objects that have been removed. And this gentleman's name is Dr. Robert Kuntz. And Dr. Kuntz basically posted, quite a bit of language way above my head. But the one thing that registered with me that I've never forgotten is he said that whoever responsible for these is at least 100 million years in advance of humans. And when I saw that number, I thought, that's the closest thing to a truth that makes any sense to me in all of this unknown.
Do you find now that you guys, together with your experiences, your book, that you help counsel or help guide other experiencers to what they are going through? Because it sounds like you guys had a very positive experience.
I pray so. I pray that, us coming out helps people.
Right. I agree with Chad. I certainly feel like both of us, Chad speaks much more calmer than the reality of what we have experienced. The reality is we've been through absolute hell in many ways with all of this. It has, what we've been able to recall to you, we both feel very blessed that it was as we've recalled it, but you can't have as much missing time as what we've experienced and what I've experienced and it just not be a hell. There is a hell associated with that of the unknowing.
Right.
It's terrifying.
Well, and I can understand that, and I explain it a little bit differently to my listeners, and I probably don't use the most politically correct analogy when I discuss my own experiences, but I describe him almost like an addict needs heroin. When I had my experience of seeing the extraterrestrial in the forest or even Carl at the window, I have yearned so badly for that to happen again. I'm almost jonesing for a fix for something to happen again. Because even though I was awake for both of them, it wasn't enough. I needed to know more. And what a lot of people don't understand is, a lot of people will say, well, your iPhone has a camera on it. Why didn't you grab any pictures? Why didn't you record something? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? They don't understand that when you go through this experience, how emotionally traumatizing it is for you. And your brain is trying to comprehend what isn't supposed to exist according to mainstream society. And you're trying to take every moment in. What did the trees look like? What did the creature look like? What time of day was it? Was there clouds in the sky? Were there rocks around? Were there trees fallen? And I know I hear you guys saying, right, because I know you guys are feeling the same way I am about this. But on the flip side, you have to be careful with that because you just don't want to call anything in. There is good and there is bad. There is the yin and the yang that goes along with it. So when I'm sitting here wanting my experience and jonesing for my experience to happen again, and it doesn't come, and it doesn't come, and it doesn't come, I feel let down. I feel frustrated. That's why we're getting T-shirts made around here that say, "Damn it, Carl." Because where the hell is Carl? I've been waiting. I've been waiting.
Well, I was in that backyard that I had been put in that experience where the object, the light bomb in my wrist, in that same location one morning. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Chad's sitting in a lawn chair. I'm standing in the threshold of these French glass doors. We had the doors open. And I'm just standing there. We're both having Sunday morning coffee, just so enjoying that moment because it was rare for it to feel that peaceful. And the air was good, no humidity. It was just perfect. And in that perfection, that's what we get for looking for some perfection. I had a pain that I can't find words to describe how severe it was. I let out a girl scream, which I don't do. Chad came flying up out of the chair. The coffee cups are flying. And what we expected, because I'm somewhat of a bleeder, is we expected to look down. It came from the top of my left foot. We expected both. First of all, I scared the poop right out of him. He flies out of the chair. We're expecting to see all kinds of blood and what have you. There did happen to be a camera right by us when this happened, and a little Polaroid or a one-stepper or something. This was like in 2003, 2004. Because the moment that this experience happened, I had Chad grab that camera to take a picture because I could not believe what we saw. Something had excised a tiny triangle or pyramid shape out of the top of my foot of skin. There was no blood and there was no redness. Now, we've included that photo. As mundane as that little photo looks, that's the top of my foot with a fresh excised portion of skin taken out of it with no redness and no blood. But they made sure that I felt the pain of it. That's just not nice. Now, I don't know what you call that. Mean, terrifying, and just like something pointing and laughing.
It almost seems like a joke.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I know you understand with what I'm saying on that, but for our audience out there, when you have these experiences, you can't explain them. Like for me, and Chad and Alta, please help out here. I don't know about you guys. I didn't really have a lot of people to talk to who I could go with. Did you have that trouble as well in building those bonds and relationships with other experiencers to find out what you were going through?
Oh, and still do.
We still are. We still have no connection.
And at first, again, we had no experience in,
any of
this kind of subject. I mean, we've had experiences, but we had no knowledge, on how to get help or how to contact or talk to other people. So it took a while.
Well, and I did it all the wrong way because there's no book of rules. And, I imagine, who knows, but for some reason we've not connected with a support system yet. Again, kind of the beauty of it when you're this long into it and as forward as we've become, because, again, it was never our intention to be forward, to come public. It was never our intention to write a book, ever. This happened after the fact of somebody who got involved with us long distance, said they wanted to investigate us, had a radio show, a small podcast, and they brought us forward. We listened to them because we were following their guidance as our investigator. Once they brought us forward, there was, as I said, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. For whatever reason, they moved on, and there was no real investigation with us, and so I just kept pursuing forward, just trying to get out there to find others and to find help originally. The book was an afterthought because people kept suggesting. Nick Redfern happened to be an individual who, was very instrumental to me on a personal level of encouraging to write this little book. The book started off, much larger and was edited to this portion. So it is our intention, if people are interested in what is going on, is for us to, try to fill in many more stories, because once we got to Alabama, we started encountering the most insane of experiences with what we call monkey lizard. Again, high strangeness in a whole different fashion than what we had experienced prior to moving there. So there's, if there's interest, we'll certainly try to follow through with filling in the rest of this crazy story.
It is a crazy story indeed. So where do you think it goes from here?
Well, we chose, very spontaneous again, to return to New Orleans after being gone for 15 years. We've just come back this year. And, it's quite amazing. And we'd like to invite anybody to please come and see for yourselves. This street that we were taken from, when this happened to us in 97, this was a fairly vacant area. The businesses were shut down for the most part, lots of vacant store shops, what have you, and just quiet and kind of dull. Not now.
Yeah, it was much more local kind of group of people around back then in this area because it's just outside the French Quarter.
It's the border.
It's kind of the border of the French Quarter. So, it was a lot more. Now it is
electrified.
It is the hot spot now. It's all around Frenchman and Esplanade, and
they're calling it the new Bourbon, which is mind blowing.
Yeah, it's much more
it's
the jazz scene and all that. So
we would love for people to see this because it's. I'd also like to mention Chad and I are the first, for the good, the bad, and the ugly of this, to come forward in print, public, to put this in print of this kind of stuff happening here. And also, Chad and I and our publisher created the word abducted that we're just working so hard to try to get it into the lexicon because we created this word. And there's no doubt to us, there are so many of us out here who have had these abduction experiences, but you just don't, you don't hear them very often. And then I'd like to last add, in regards to all of this, the fact that I've done nothing but try to stay on top of this and research what is happening in this area. All the years we've been away from here having these other experiences. I discovered last year, I believe it was, or maybe not even that long ago, somebody, but of course they kept it anonymous, so I can't trace them, I can't track them to try to connect with whoever this is, posted a photo of what I would call an armada of light craft, at least 20 of them, directly above the location we went poof off of. Now that means there's something going on here.
I agree there's something going on, but does the curiosity ever kill you at times in regards to not getting the answers you need?
Oh, many times in resurrection, down and up and resurrection, and because we're all we have, we discovered. Chad and I are all we have, and so we feel blessed that this has happened to the both of us, that we have each other to lean on through all of this. But curiosity keeps us going, and the openness, and now we're back in this area, and it's all changed so dramatically from when we lived here before. So it's just very strange and kind of a new day, and that's sort of how we have to face it.
Mm-hmm. We only have about 4 minutes left with you guys tonight, and I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to do this. The artistry on your book, which is called Orbducted in the French Quarter. On the front page, you have an alien gray who looks a little bit like Carl. I'm not going to lie. That's a pretty good rendition of Carl. But on the back, you have a beautiful lady. Who did the artistry for you? And how accurate is it to your own experiences?
So I'll just Chad's pointing at me, I'll mention our publisher, Paul, is responsible for the artistry of the book. He also is the one who came up with a list of words to present to us, and this is where Abducted came from as well. I'll have Chad share with you his idea about the rendition of the blue being and what have you.
Yeah, my blue being is fairly close. Again, it's the artist rendition. Mine was a little more softer, a little more gentle.
Not as menacing.
Not quite maybe as menacing as the one on the front cover, but once he presented it to us, we thought not to be try not to be too picky and go with what he came up with, which we thought was a beautiful and nice cover. And then also, kind of back behind my brew is the actual location of the last spot that we remember being, which is right there around the Checkpoint Charlie nightclub.
Right, that's an actual photograph of where we went.
Of our scoop and corner.
And then as far as the blonde being, the female, that is truly just an artist's rendition. It's as close as I could pick out that he presented to me of what one would look at as possibly a beautiful blonde woman. There is no, in all honesty, though, there is, from my own personal experience, my memory, there is no comparison in regards to the essence of her. I see a beautiful artistry of a beautiful blonde woman, but in the reality of that, of course, it's just so much different. And I'm not sure that anything like that could be duplicated.
All I know is that I haven't had that pleasure, because if I get taken by somebody who looks like her, damn it, I'm never coming back.
Right.
Instead, I get Carl, who continues to treat me like a bad one-night stand.
Carl.
I know, it's painful.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Some of us, like Chad said, his dad and them get their experience down in Cancun, and we get it above a supersized Walmart, Hammond, Louisiana. Life is just fair.
My friends, we are running out of time here. I would love it if you told our listeners where they can find your book.
Again, you can find us on our Facebook page. I'm working on a website, but right now you can find us on the website page. You can contact me there. You can also go on our Etsy page. I do have a link on our Facebook page. You can buy it there, or just contact me, and we can go through PayPal, over the phone, or however they prefer, getting an invoice or anything like that.
And we thank you so much for your kindness about our little book.
I appreciate that.
We're very grateful.
You guys hold on. I got to wrap this thing up. It's at that time. Chad and Alta Dillard, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, Ian Holt will be back at spacedoutradio.com. We're getting into the conspiracy of music, some of the deaths like Tupac. We're going to get into the paranormal as well. I want to thank my team, Everett Thiemer and Eric Markham from The Encounter Online, Jolene Lammers, Tim Doyle on web design, Catherine James, social media, Bob Davis, the dulcet tones of our announcer, Kim Gandy, our Director of Business Management, who take very, very good care of us. And most importantly, all of you in the chat rooms for taking care of us as well. You spread the word. You spread the love. Remember, I want those pictures. How do you soar? Send them to info@spacedoutradio.com. I want to put a collage together of our listeners, because together, my friends, we own the night. I'll talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, do us a favor. Take us home.